Our first tipping point tonight: how can the Women's March claim they are non-violent when they allow radicals like Razmaya O'Day and Linda Sarsour to lead them and champion cop killer Assata Shakur? This week marks the 6-month anniversary of the Women's March. 6 months ago, women dressed in pink genitalia-themed hats stormed the streets of Washington, D.C., demanding respect as they stomped around dressed like crotches. Since then, the Women's March has practiced what they call intersectionality, meaning they've morphed from a liberal feminist group into a radical progressive effort targeting any issue. In fact, just this week, the Women's March Twitter account published a 20-tweet rant defending Assata Shakur, the notorious cop killer who gunned down a New Jersey state trooper, was convicted of murder, escaped prison, and fled to communist Cuba. Yet, while defending this murderer as a feminist to be respected, the Women's March claims they are a non-violent movement. Joining me now to discuss, former Georgia State Representative, Democratic strategist LaDawn Jones. LaDawn, good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
All right, LaDawn, let's get right to this question of the day, and that is, how can the Women's March logically claim that they're non-violent when they spend at least 20 tweets defending a cop killer?
Well, anytime you have a movement is made up of people who have like minds on one particular issue, whatever the movement is about. And in the same way that you all don't disclaim the NRA because the Klan marches next to you for their issues, you don't have to necessarily throw out all the issues of the Women's March because of who's involved in it. Instead of nitpicking it, we should look at what are they asking for? What are they marching for? Instead of focusing on the one most negative person that's involved with their entire process.
But this wasn't a person that's involved. Assata Shakur, as far as I know at least, is not involved with the Women's March. She's a cop killer. She fled to communist Cuba. That's where she lives in cowardice to this day. But this was the official Twitter account of the Women's March. That means the founding members, the organizers, the leaders of this march endorse what their Twitter account says. That's what it means to speak in public. This isn't some fringe element, because I agree with you, there are fringe elements to any group. This is the official word from the Women's March. How can they claim to be nonviolent when they're defending a woman who shot a New Jersey state trooper and then fled the country?
They are defending the principles of Assata Shakur, and we are, as all people, are not only the incidents that we have that occur in our life. And the story of Assata Shakur is an amazing, fascinating story that's really a deeper discussion of the criminal justice system in our country. But that aside, the things that she stands for, the things that she stands for as it relates to women, is something that they can identify with. And the issues that we need to be focused on is what can we do to make our society better for all women, instead of look at this one person that they're lifting up and therefore everything they must be talking about is not valid.
No, I mean, I think it's a much more serious issue than them supporting one person who I think is clearly a murderer. I mean, she was convicted in our justice system. What message does this send to the next generation of women that the Women's March are trying to instill their values? I mean, what does this say to little girls? That if you don't like a cop, it's okay to shoot them? That someone who is a murderer who fled to a communist nation is someone that we should emulate? I mean, the Women's March only said that the tactics that Assata Shakur used were different. They didn't say she's a murderer, she killed a cop, she committed an affront on our justice system, she caused someone to lose their life and someone to lose their father and their brother and their son. They're completely ignoring the fact that she's a murderer.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the Women's March with Assata Shakur or whomever is going to have the same effect on little girls that the Million Man March had on me. And there were a lot of conservatives then who said that the Million Man March was a hateful march, that there was something wrong with it because some of the organizers and some of their stances when they were standing up so long ago for police brutality. And look, here we are more than 20 years later, and instead of addressing police brutality, and it's gotten worse, we're still talking about who's marching with who. That's the problem. Let's stop focusing on the organizers or exactly what they may stand for, and look at what is the issue that the overall group and the movement is trying to accomplish. That's what we need to do to solve this problem.
Democrats certainly don't give that same respect to Republicans. They assume that all Republicans have this rubber stamp of ideology here. So if that's the standard we're going to hold, we should hold that to be an equal standard. But I'll concede that to you for just a second, and let me separate then. If that's the organizers and that's the Women's March speaking just for themselves, not for every woman who's participated, clearly, let me ask you, as a liberal feminist who has been supportive of the Women's March, do you condemn Assata Shakur as being a violent person who should not be an example of political activism to our little girls?
As a woman, as a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, what I know about the Assata Shakur case is what I know about every case. There are two sides to every pancake, no matter how thin that pancake would be. And although she was convicted by a jury, she has another side of the story. I wasn't there, so I can't say if she was a cop killer or if she was working for liberation.
Wait a second.
I'll tell you.
Wait a second. So you won't condemn the fact that she shot a New Jersey state trooper, and after she was convicted, she escaped and fled to Cuba? You're not going to condemn a murderer?
I'm not going to assume that she was a murderer because I was not there. A jury may have decided that, but that is not exactly what she has said. And you have to understand, as a criminal defense attorney, I represent murderers quite often, and they always have their side to the story.
Right, but at the end of the day, I mean, we have to put some faith in our justice system. And if she was convicted and it was never overturned after this much attention, it's shocking to me, to be honest, LaDawn, that so many people are defending the violent tendencies of the women who are, like it or not, speaking for this movement. It's not just Assata Shakur, the cop killer. I mean, Linda Sarsour has called, and she is the official co-organizer of the Women's March. She has called for female genital mutilation for two women who disagree with her politics. I mean, is that the kind of woman you want speaking for you as a liberal feminist?
What I've learned is that, you know, whether you like someone speaking for you or not, you don't get a choice. I have a president named Mr. Trump who says things that I wish he wouldn't all the time.
Right, but this is the opportunity. I mean, this is the opportunity to make that choice. You don't have to let Linda Sarsour speak for you. You can say, I, as a liberal feminist, condemn the violent rhetoric that she is spewing, condemn the fact that when people disagree with her, she threatens to sue them, condemn the fact that she called for jihad against our president. This is your chance to not have her speak for you, and go ahead and take it.
I would be happy to take that chance, but since this is your show, Liz, I say you go first, and you condemn the white supremacists, the KKK, the white nationalists,
and
I
absolutely, unequivocally, always condemn white supremacists, but that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about black nationalists who kill cops, who feminists are holding up as an exemplary feminist figure. We're talking about a feminist who's calling for jihad against our president, a feminist who claims she champions women's rights and then advocates for female genital mutilation against other women who disagree with her. I don't understand why that's so hard to condemn.
Well, because that's not what I do. I am not in a position to condemn anyone. I can easily say that there are things about people that I agree with, some stances that I agree with, and things about them that I don't. But that is not my role to condemn anybody. But what I can say unassuredly and very, very clear, that I stand for what the Women's March stands for. And although there may be people amongst them that may not be as perfect as other folks watching your show, I can stand for things that are important. What the Women's March stands for, what that movement is about, is something that we can all stand for, individuals aside.
No, I don't think so. I think that the Women's March has made it very clear what they stand for. They stand for support of these types of women. They stand for support of Assata Shakur, who killed a cop. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm all for individual liberty. Clearly, I'm a professional woman in what would be described as a man's world here. I'm all about equality and freedom and equal standards, but that's not what the Women's March is fighting for anymore. They have morphed into something quite different. LaDawn, I so appreciate these conversations we have every week. Thanks so much for being here.